In early 2026, we gathered a panel of leading experts in the field of shareholder disputes at the office of Laytons ETL. The panel comprised Barrister Paul Mitchell KC from 4 New Square, forensic accountant Daniel Djanogly and tax expert Jamie Muirhead from Wilder Coe, and myself, Geraint Thomas, the head of disputes at Laytons ETL, with my litigation partner and regulatory expert, Ben Thorogood.
Episode 2, Valuation as a Strategic Tool.
I think it's often surprising the value that it can add in terms of valuation advice at an early stage, because whilst these types of claims are usually structured in 2 parts, where you argue about who's right or wrong first and then squabble about what the remedy should be and how much one party should be paid in terms of the value of their interest. If you approach it in that way.
Sorry to interrupt, or you might end up having a huge argument about something that's not very valuable at all.
Well, can I just jump in, because Ben raises the point that goes to the added value question that I didn't answer, that I was getting to in my long-winded way. Because when you and in a way, naturally, what we've just heard from you guys is essentially polarized positions emerging in a situation where, in principle, because they're polarized, it's got to be somewhere in between, where there'll be positives and negatives to that statement in terms of likelihoods, but it's got to be somewhere in between. So if that is recognised, essentially, that we have the 2 sides, they want to go their separate ways, they just can't agree on the price between them, then jumping in early, using people with expertise in the area of, we're talking valuation.
What information are you likely to need from me, and how do you add value at that stage?
So the information that I would require would tend to be of a technical nature, going into the financial performance profile of the entity, and beyond, into who's running it, where it's come from, where it's going, for the purposes of delivering on the issue or issues of valuation, because there may be different dates of valuation required, there may be different premises for the purposes of valuation for the exercise. So it's a quite a long shop, could be quite a long shopping list of information of a variety of types that will need to be collected and processed for the purposes of answering the technical questions associated with valuation that may be relevant to you as the litigation team in the court for the purposes of moving the project forward, so to speak, and finding some sort of resolution before or after or at court. On a limited scope basis, might be a way with transparency, because part of this exercise is an element of trust that both the various parties need to build into trust in the process. That what this transparent process might deliver is a means to get them out of the situation nobody really wants to be in, because they want to go their separate ways.
So
again,
what you're suggesting, in effect, is that we could introduce you in those circumstances, not as the expert for our own client necessarily, but somebody who's the independent arbiter that could look at this scenario and make some recommendations, maybe on, without too much formality to it.
Yes, but we would, from my perspective on the expert side, it would be something one might want to describe in technical language as early neutral expert evaluation.
Yes.
A non-binding, jointly appointed expert report on the issue with reasons for the opinion which would otherwise be binding if it hadn't been decided at the outset, it was non-binding. It gives a discussion, a basis for a discussion, a framework for discussion, and in the right circumstances where there's trust in the process, you might find it adds the value in the outcome sense of resolving it early rather than letting it go full term.
I think it can certainly be the bridge between the polarising positions on liability if you can have one expert or two separate experts say, actually, right or wrong, the valuation is somewhere between these ranges. And I think it's surprising how often that experts can be quite close to agreement, and finding that at an early stage is, I think, quite crucial to inform strategy. But I think it can be true that also that where you have, whether it's superpowers or some other form of negative control, you could have a situation where a controlling party is thinking about provoking a claim of that nature because the minority shareholder is sufficiently inconvenient, whether that's because you can't raise the new money or otherwise, and to then have an understanding of what you would be getting yourself into. Because these types of claims have this curious mechanism of, if you are the party that's in the wrong, you have caused prejudice, but you make an early and proper offer to purchase them for fair value, you can quite effectively knock it on the head and stem the...
Or at least mitigate your risk.
Well, indeed. So you can actually, as a controlling party, be quite effective in your wrongdoing, as long as you take the appropriate steps. But you can't do that without knowing where to pitch.
Yeah, quite. I mean, I suppose it ceases to become wrongdoing once you make a decent offer to buy their shares. I think I mean, if both parties want to split up, then, expert determination strikes me as a, usually very valuable thing, and they can agree to have it non-binding if they're worried about, the fairness of the process. But quite often the issue, especially in these companies where it's friends or family who've fallen out, doesn't immediately concern wanting to part company. I mean, they might get there eventually, but very often there's so little faith and so little trust that people want disclosure, they want to understand everything before they're in a position to think about how to split up.